Hello, everyone, and welcome back to India Law LLP podcast. I'm Shreya Kavra. Today's episode is about something that literally keeps India moving roads. Whether it's highways, expressways, or flyovers, we use them every day. But very few people really see the complex legal and financial machinery working behind the scenes to make these projects possible. Road projects are long term, high stakes, and complex with a mix of government authorities, private developers, banks, and consultants, basically, a full cast of characters. To help us break this down in a simple yet practical way, I am joined by Ms. Uditi Singh, Senior Associate in Banking and Finance team at India Law LLP. She is someone who works closely on a range of financial and regulatory matters, and today we'll be leaning on her expertise to break this down for us. Thanks, Uditi, for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
To start with the basics, when we say road projects in India, what exactly are we talking about legally and financially?
Okay. So, in terms of road projects in India, think about highways, expressways, smaller road projects. When we talk about road projects, particularly, these are capital intensive projects which generate long term assets for the government, for the state. So, road projects in India are primarily structured as PPP partnerships, which is public private partnership models. Basically, a project is floated by the state and a private developer takes up the responsibility of building and operating and maintaining this road project. So, in terms of investment, the private developer will bring in the finance or the monetary aspect required for the construction of the project and will subsequently recover this once the project is completed, either in the form of toll collection, which is dependent upon traffic, or in the form of annuity payments which are generated or other provided by the authority to the developer. So, road projects in India definitely very important infrastructure and regulated, I would say, space in India.
Almost every road project we come across is implemented through a special purpose vehicle or an SPV. Why is the SPV model so central to the road project financing?
Okay. So, absolutely, the SPV model is something which is centric to road projects in India. Basically, an SPV is a special entity or a special company that is constituted specifically for the building, operating, and maintaining of the road project. The idea behind this is twofold. It is beneficial to the project sponsor also. So, project sponsor basically means the actual infra entity of whom this SPV is a wholly owned subsidiary, and it is also beneficial to the lender. So, let's talk about firstly how it is beneficial to the sponsor. Say, I am a leading infra group. I have multiple projects going on. I have multiple, avenues where my money is invested. I have multiple assets. Okay. Now, the idea of constituting an SPV is to ring fence my other assets. Okay. So, this SPV will be only and only concerned with the specific road project. The assets and liabilities of the SPV will be restricted to the SPV and will not sort of be affixed to the sponsor entity. So it ring fences my assets. It protects me from insolvency. More importantly, with laws like the IBC code coming in, the sponsors want to preserve their other assets. They don't want the commingling to happen. So the SPV model is beneficial to the sponsor like that. In terms of how the SPV model is beneficial to the lender entity, again, there is no unnecessary competing with other liabilities that the sponsor may have. The liabilities of the project SPV are of the project SPV itself. It becomes easier in terms of monitoring the cash flows because the receivables, like I mentioned, the toll collection or the annuity payments or any other form of support that is going to come from the authority that has awarded this tender will go to the SPV only. And the assets of the SPV will also be its own. So, because of this, it becomes easier for the lender to monitor the project, monitor the cash flows of the SPV, monitor the assets. Another important factor behind the SPV model is creation of security. Like because the assets of the SPV are isolated, it becomes easier for the lender to identify the assets over which it wants to take a charge. Security creation becomes easier. So these are the reasons why the SPV model is in particular, important in terms of road project. It brings in a lot of clarity and transparency. And because these are, as I mentioned, these are high stake projects, it allows, proper, monitoring of the project as such.
There are multiple authorities and stakeholders that are involved in a road project. Can you talk us through that?
Sure. So, when we are talking about the authorities, or rather the regulatory authorities that are looking after road projects in India, at the central level, we have the National Highways Authority of India, which is popularly known as NHAI. NHAI operates under the guidance and instructions of the Ministry of Road Transport, MORT, commonly known as. This is at the central level. Coming to the state levels, each and every state will either have a state public works department or state road corporations which tender out the projects concerning the state. So these are the government authorities that are involved. And if we are to go a little deeper into the other stakeholders, of course, there is the concessionaire, there is the sponsor or the holding entity, which is, the concerned infrastructure group. Then there are the lenders, the project lenders, senior lenders, junior lenders. Apart from that, the project is also heavily dependent on a number of consultants. So the authority will have its own set of consultants. The SPV will have its consultants. The lenders that may come in will have their own consultants. So these are your technical consultants, legal consultants, insurance advisors. In terms of where traffic is concerned, also there are traffic consultants who provide revenue projections. So it's a whole, stakeholder this thing.
Lot of character.
Yeah, altogether.
Coming to the big question, man, road projects don't come cheap. So who actually pays for this? How are road projects typically financed in our country?
Okay. So, as we started out by saying that these are very, very capital intensive and long term projects with duration of over 15 to 30 years. So, obviously, the money is going to be invested for a very long time. So, typically in India, road projects are financed on a equity and debt combination basis. So, the equity component is provided by the sponsor or the promoter entity, and it is commonly referred to as the promoter contribution to the project. Apart from that, the debt component, it can be generated either, from banks, NBFCs, lenders basically, and also in certain models, for example, HAM, in certain models, even the authority will shell out a portion of finance. So there is a debt to equity ratio which is required to be maintained throughout the lifetime of the project. Because of this debt to equity ratio, uh, the promoters are also bound by the project, the lenders are also bound by the project. So the whole and sole idea is to ensure continuity of the project. The project should not get halted because of any unforeseen financial distress. So yeah, debt to equity combination is usually there in India.
Right. Talking about models, I think that is where most of the confusion comes in. So there is bot, there is ham, there is tot. Can you walk us through these models but in a simpler way?
Sure, sure. So this is a very good question. I think a lot of people have this doubt as to how these different PPP models are, chosen or rather categorized. So let's start with BOT. BOT is your build, operate, and transfer model. Under the BOT model, basically the concessionaire or the project SPV will construct the road or the highway or whatever it is and will operate it. So the initial investment that the SPV has done towards this project will be recovered through the traffic toll collection basically. So the tolls are obviously dependent on the road traffic. There will be projections, in the initial phases of the project as to how much of revenue can we expect once this project is completed. So the bot model basically gives the concessionaire the right to collect tolls over that particular project. In terms of because this is heavily dependent on the traffic regulation, In recent years, HAM model has become very popular. So HAM is basically hybrid annuity model. To reduce the dependency on the traffic component, the traffic risk, the HAM model offers annuity payments. So basically, in the HAM model, once the road project is completed, during the maintenance period, annuities are paid by the authority that has tendered the project to the project SPV. And this ensures a little bit of safety net to the lenders of the project SPV, because this amount is not dependent on the traffic. It comes directly from the authority as annuity payments. Apart from this, there is also the TOT model, which is the toll operate and transfer model. But this is not an under construction project. In a TOT model, an operational road is sort of awarded by the authority, and the concessionaire or the SPV will pay a upfront concession fee to the authority and gain the rights to collect the toll revenues out of this project. So again, TOT comparatively is less risky because the road is already functional. So if we are to basically risk profile all these models, I would say definitely HAM and TOT are more bankable, comparatively safer investments from the lender's point of view, whereas BOT, which is heavily dependent on toll collection, traffic revenues, is a little riskier.
Now that we are talking about lenders, lenders are often just seen as money providers. But in a project which is so high stake, I think it tends to involve more of the lenders. So, what does this role look like uh, over a life of that project?
Okay. So, I think gone are the days when lenders were just passive financiers in the background. But certainly, right, even before they become lenders, they sort of start investing themselves into the project. Okay. So, for example, say if I'm a public sector bank and I have to finance a road project, I will do a detailed study of the project. I will see whether or not this project is viable. What are the leaks in the mechanism? What are the leaks in the, you know, practical feasibility of this project to happen? What is the expected toll generated in terms of, whether servicing of the debt is dependent on the toll? So I will do a detailed study with my independent consultants who will advise me on this project. So that sort of also comes in handy for the SPV and the authority, that another third party is reviewing the project structure in its entirety. Then, of course, the second and the most crucial part would be the finance, which is provided by the lender directly. So once this finance comes in, it becomes easier for the project SPV to kickstart the project and undertake the operations. Also, the authority gets certainty that now there is a lender backing the project. So, of course, the role of the financer is always there. Once the project is started and it's in its building phase, the lender sort of takes a little backseat and goes towards monitoring of the project. So the lender will call for, periodic reports. Lenders, engineers will see whether, the project is milestones are being met as per the set schedule. So the monitoring role of the lender also comes in handy. And of course, God forbid, say there is some sort of hindrance in the project, or there is a default on the part of the SPV, the lender also, through the provisions in the concession agreement and the other documents, the lender will also sort of have the right to ensure that the project continues, okay, by maybe replacing the concessionaire, changing the management of the concessionaire. So the lender has an all-encompassing role in today's times in road projects.
Coming to lenders, I'm pretty sure if they're lending such a huge amount of money, they
Oh,
would like a
while you are mentioning lenders, I also want to just quickly bring in the step-in rights of the lenders and the substitution rights of the lenders. So this is also an important point that I feel a lot of people should know. So step-in rights are basically where, the lender will have the right to step into the shoes of the concessionaire. I mean, they're not going to start running the project on their own, but they will have the right to monitor the cash flows. They will have the right to appoint O&M contractors, other consultants. This will also sort of ensure continuity of the project. And then there is a very crucial right of substitution. So substitution, as I mentioned, lender can also change the management of the SPV or can substitute the SPV altogether. This is also something that is very crucial. So to exercise substitution, basically the lender will go back to the original parameters or eligibility criteria floated by the authority. And that particular basis entity is meeting that particular criteria, the lender will identify a company to substitute the concessionaire with, subject to the approval of the authority. So these are also crucial points that the lender has in its role.
Fair enough. So, coming back to someone who's lending a lot of money would also like extra bit of comfort, and there are a lot of risks involved in a road project.
So
What are some of the common credit enhancement tools that are used in these projects to make them more bankable?
So, when we say credit enhancement tools, we are basically talking about how the lender can reduce its risk of losing revenue and how the lender can ensure that it is able to recover its investments one way or another. So, in terms of credit enhancement, I think the concept of credit enhancement becomes very important in bought projects, okay, which are riskier compared to HAM. HAM itself has annuity comings in, which is in itself a credit enhancement tool. There's an authority that is going to pay the annuity models. So, that is not, as risky. But credit enhancement becomes very important in the riskier projects. So, common credit enhancement tools would be firstly, I would say the sponsor support. Okay. So the project SPV, okay, is under the instructions or rather controlled by another infra company. So this infra company will sort of provide a shortfall undertaking or a guarantee. Commonly, I think they do give shortfall undertakings. So if there is any deficit in meeting the obligations of the concessionaire under the concession agreement or to the lender, the promoter will step in to meet that shortfall. Or for example, if the project has sustained overtime scheduled for it, so there is a cost overrun, so this is also something that the promoter will take care of. So that is something which is very important, corporate guarantee or a shortfall undertaking from the promoter. Apart from that, lender will of course take rights over the project SPV's assets. It will take assignment of rights that the project SPV has under the project documents. So these are the additional pushings and covers that the lenders will seek.
Being from like a practice of so long in this particular field, I want to know the lawyer's perspective on the most interesting thing that you spoke about, a concession agreement. So, what do the lenders most focus on when they look at a concession agreement? And why is this document so central to the project?
Okay. Yes. So the concession agreement is the heart of the whole project. It is the principal document that governs the rights and obligations and risk allocation between the authority that has awarded the project and the project SPV that is actually going to execute the project. The concession agreement also sometimes recognizes the lenders of the project SPV because substantial financing is involved, so that has to be done. Now, from a lawyer's perspective, specifically, when I am appointed as the lender's counsel, I am usually the instructions that flow to me are they want to know in which scenarios will the authority be liable to pay to the concessionaire and in which scenarios will the concessionaire be liable to pay to the authority. Obviously, because I have funded this project, my revenues or rather my debt servicing is dependent upon this project. Therefore, the money part becomes the primary factor that the lenders are interested in. Apart from that, the lenders also want to know instances in which this project may pass out of the hands of the concessionaire. For example, if there is some kind of default, some kind of stoppage of the project, okay, termination of the concessionaire can happen. So termination provisions, linked termination payments, these clauses also are very important. There are certain force majeure clauses where basically due to no party's fault, still the project is stopped. There's some hurdle, okay, act of God as we commonly know it. Political inconvenience can be another reason. So force majeure is something which is the lenders are very interested in knowing about. Apart from that, another important provision would be change in law and change of scope. So change in law is basically, the governing framework is ever evolving. It keeps on changing. There are new laws, new regulations. So because of change in law, certain payments may have to be either enhanced or reduced or stopped altogether. So these provisions are also something that the lenders want to know about. Change in scope of work is another important provision, because this is going to entail additional scope of work or diminished scope of work on the part of the concessionaire, both of which is going to have a direct bearing on the debt servicing of the lender. So either the borrower will come to the lender with additional finance, or they may say that, we want to restructure our loan or reschedule our payments. Reason being, there is a change in our scope. So change in scope is also something that is important. Like we spoke about the step-in rights of the lenders, there is also the step-in rights of the authority, substitution rights of the authority. So these are the centric provisions that I think govern the tender
More
pipe.
about it, I think there is a whole group of people who are not really discussed about when we talk about a road project, who work behind the scenes. One of them I would think is the consultant.
Yes.
Why do lenders rely on consultants so much, and what are like the key features of the consultants when they are involved in a road project?
Because the lenders have to invest considerable amounts of funds into the project, it is only natural that the lenders are going to engage specialist consultants. Lenders are financial institutions. They may not necessarily have the in-house capacity to assess the project viability, assess the cash flows of the project. So in such case, the lenders will, rely on external consultants. So there are technical consultants who will assess the viability of the project, who will assess the construction methodology, who will assess the timelines and the project estimates for the lender. So this is a cushion to the lender, so that the lender does not entirely have to depend, or rather rely on the representation that is coming from the borrower. So technical consultants are there. Apart from that, there are insurance advisors who advise on the insurance of the project assets, SPVs assets. um, Apart from that, there are also legal advisors, of course, who will ensure that, the provisions, or rather the project documents in their entirety, are enforceable. They will advise on the security creation of the lender. They will give an enforceability opinion with respect to the whole and soul of the documentation framework part, compliance, regulations, and everything. And then there are the independent engineers of the lenders. So independent engineers will basically advise the lenders on whether the project is being completed as per, or rather progressing as per the agreed milestones, the quality of material that is being used, the gradation, whether it is as per the provisions of the concession agreement. So the independent engineer is basically the engineer of the lender who is monitoring the project for the lender. So all these consultants put together, I'm sure there are a lot more, but all these consultants put together, form the project team of the lender. And basis their advice and inputs, the lender will schedule the disbursements of the loan. So loan will be linked to the project milestones, quality of the project, the project SPV being in compliance with the concession provisions. So yeah, the consultation team is very, very important.
I think one of the key concerns would be security. And when lenders come on board, I think they really want to be clear about what is actually securing their money. So, what does a typical funding and security structure look like in such a project?
So, road projects falling under the category of project finance. Firstly, of course, the primary security will always be the receivables from the project, whether it is the right to collect toll, whether it is the annuity payments, or it can also be a combination of both. So, the primary security will always be the receivables of the project. Apart from that, lenders also are interested in taking pledge of the shares of the SPV. So this is because, say tomorrow there is a default, the lender will invoke the pledge and step into the shoes of the SPV and exercise their rights as per the concession agreement. So pledge is something that is again there. Assignment of rights and the project documents is also something which is very important, because project documents will, say for example, your contracts with the O&M contractors, your concession agreement in itself. So all these project documents, whatever rights the SPV has under the project documents, will also be assigned to the lender. So I think these things, bank accounts of the SPV, there's always an escrow mechanism, charges taken over the bank accounts of the SPV. So these things in general form the security package. If say the underwriting requires it, in such case there may also be third party securities. Sometimes assets of the sponsor may be hypothecated, though that is not centric to project finance, but at times that may be required depending upon the risk profile of the borrower.
Now that you have spoken about escrow mechanism, before wrapping it up, I would finally like to talk about it. Basically, it's the rule book of how the money moves once it starts coming. Why is it so important to road project financing?
I think it's not just important to road project, but infra in general will always have either an escrow or a TRA in place. So the escrow mechanism is basically the money that is receivable to the project SPV from the authority will be sort of put into a separate account. Okay, this account will this account will monitor the usage of these funds. So basically the money that is invested by the project entity and the money that is received by the project entity from the authority is all put together in one account. And then there is a waterfall mechanism prescribing the usage of this money. Usually, the top priority is given to the statutory dues. Post that, the O&M expenses, of course, after once the project is over. During the construction period, there is the project construction cost. Then there is the O&M expenses. Then lenders at times require the project entities to maintain something called as a DESRA. It is a debt service reserve account. So usual practices say 1 quarter's worth principal and interest repayment is required to be maintained in the DESRA. So there will be a provision for maintaining of DESRA. Then there will be, provision for repaying the debt of the lender. And post that there will be, if there is any surplus, there can be there's this concept of cash sweep, which let's not go into today. But yeah, there is that concept also. And then if there is any remaining balance amount, it will be going to the sponsor.
I think we have covered everything from how these projects work and are structured and financed to who the authorities are, leaders, lenders, consultants, and the framework that holds it all together. That brings us to the end of what was really an insightful conversation.
Right.
Thank you so much, Aditi,
Right.
for breaking this down, what an otherwise very complex sector of banking looks like. I am sure our listeners, especially the young lawyers and professionals who are interested in project finance, are taking a lot away from this. Thank you to our listeners for coming in.